America analyst Javier Farje, who joins me now from London. Javier, good to have you on the show. When you look at who's in this runoff, I suppose that the Gonzales Noboa matchup means that there is still a strong and loyal base for the leftist movement in the country.
Yes and no. Yes, indeed, she's top. I'm looking at the results as we speak. 33%. Daniel Noboa, 23%. Christian Zurita, 16%. Jan Topic, 14%. She's the only experienced politician. The others do not have that kind of experience. However, if you put together the votes of Mr. Noboa and you add to those votes the votes of Mr. Zurita, who replaced Fernando Villavicencio, the slain candidate who was assassinated on the 9th of August, the anti-corruption ticket, if you put those votes together, that would give Mr. Noboa a victory in the runoff. And if you add to that Jan Topic's vote, he's a hardline politician who wants to solve the crime problem the same way that Mr. Nayib Bukele has done in El Salvador, which has been very controversial. If you put together these votes, which are very likely to go to Mr. Noboa, then he could win the next the runoff. So the chances for Luisa Gonzalez to become the next president are a bit weaker than they were before. Opinion polls went out of the window totally because Mr. Noboa came out from nowhere. And it is important to realize that he appealed to the young vote. We must understand that most of the people who who are in the electoral register at the moment are between 23 and 40 years old. They don't place themselves between left and right, traditional left and right spectrum. And they saw in Mr. Noboa, a 35-year-old businessman, a man who represents his interests, their interests.
Javier, let's shift gears to something that you just mentioned earlier this month. The presidential candidate, Fernando Villavicencio, was murdered on the campaign trail. I'm wondering, there's also been a couple more politics-related shootings as well.
Yes.
So it is a campaign period that has been marred by politics-related violence. I'm wondering how this has weighed in on voters' tendencies.
Definitely. Jan Topic, who calls himself the Bukele of Ecuador, he came fourth with 14%, not far behind Christian Zurita. In the opinion polls, he was at the bottom of the table. So his hardline speech about fighting crime has appealed to many people. Now, Mr. Noboa gave a press conference just after the first results were announced, and he said that he would discuss with Mr. Topic issues related to security. That means that he's already thinking about trying to adopt some hardline policies in relation to fighting crime, which has become a huge problem in Ecuador because you have huge gangs of criminals who are working for the Mexican drug cartels in Ecuador. And that actually was one of them who assassinated Mr. Villavicencio. So crime became a top issue in this particular election. Mrs. Gonzalez, Luisa Gonzalez, who represents the party that is led by former President Rafael Correa. He suspended cooperation with the United States when he was president in terms of fighting crime, and people do not like that. So whoever wins the election will have to come up with some strong measures to fight crime, because that has become a top issue in Ecuador at the moment, and especially among young people who feel insecure in terms of going to university, getting jobs, etc., etc. So crime is definitely now in Ecuador unlike before, and I've been there many times as a journalist covering stories. I've never seen the levels of crimes and violence that Ecuador is facing now, and that is a major issue now, and the votes reflect that.
Javier, how did this become such a huge problem? Because when you compare Ecuador to, let's say, one of its neighboring countries like Colombia,
Peru,
it's been relatively calm. It was a tranquil country, but you've seen riots break out in local prisons, local gangs, as well as the mafia. They've unleashed an unprecedented wave of terror. How did we get here?
Ecuador, together with Peru and Bolivia, are the main sources of cocaine trade, the main sources of raw material, the coca leaf, which is used to produce cocaine. And the Mexican drug cartels have established an alliance with local criminal gangs to work for them to try to get access to the raw materials needed to produce cocaine, which makes it easy for the Mexican cartels to produce it in laboratories within the Amazon in Ecuador. So these local gangs are well-funded, well-armed, and well-protected by the huge Mexican drug cartels. And that has given them a lot of firepower, a lot of money. They have been able to corrupt people, and they have taken over parts of the country. That is what happened. Without the raw material, without the coca leaf, of which Ecuador is one of the top producers in the world, together with Peru and Bolivia, they cannot produce the cocaine. So having access to that makes it easy for these drug cartels in Mexico to produce cocaine and sell it to the United States and Europe. And these local gangs in Ecuador are part of this structure. In fact, it was one of these gangs that assassinated Mr. Fernando Villavicencio through Colombian hitmen who are hired by these gangs to assassinate politicians, like it's happened in Haiti, for example. So that's how Ecuador has got to this position. The need that these gangs have to have access to the raw material to produce the cocaine that they export later to the United States and Europe.
Javier Farje, thank you very much for joining us on the News Hour. We'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you.